Pastor Randy here. Welcome to Making It Simple. Always great to be with you. Looking forward to wrapping up this introduction to the beauty of simple. And then we'll start getting into the heart of this message. But I felt it important to begin with 2 or 3 parts to really explain why this is so important. Not only to me, but I believe to the listening audience. Because complexity, difficulty, all these different stuff, it's a barrier to understanding. Now, what am I saying when I say that? I'm not talking about someone's intelligence level, okay? Because everybody learns it a different way when it comes to those kind of things. But when something is made so complicated or something is done intentional to create a barrier, that reduces the willingness to learn. That reduces the desire to learn. I remember being in school many, many years ago, and we had I can't remember if it was biology or chemistry, but it was one of those classes. We had a teacher. And I remember that he thought it was funny. He found it comical because he was a very intelligent person. I don't take that away from him at all. But he found it comical of making things 100 times more complicated than they needed to be. He enjoyed seeing the student struggle for some reason, giving you a test on Friday for something you've studied all week long, only for it to not be something that you studied. It would be 4 chapters ahead, and his justification of that, well, you should have been reading ahead. Well, so that's a different mindset. Why do I advocate for the simplicity of teaching and preaching? Because I believe that it empowers us, friends. It empowers us to grasp and apply the truth. Because Jesus said you would know the truth. Knowing is something that I've been able to impart, something that I've been able to grasp, something I've been able to embrace, knowing the truth. And he says, and that truth will make you free. So what is simple? What does any of that, what is seeing these things, what does that have to do with our matters of faith? Well, my simple answer is everything. Everything's Why does this matter? Well, several years ago, the Lord really, really impressed this upon my heart. Make it simple. What does that mean? And again, it's not about, as I said yesterday, it's not about dumbing things down. But what is the practical application of what we've been given? What does all of this mean? Why does that matter? Pretty much everything today in this world has some kind of complication. It doesn't really matter what the subject is. Nothing seems clear anymore. Obviously, we all know the timing that we're in right now, and we're just coming out of the election season. And for the last many years, even that, which seems on the surface to be a relatively simple thing, right? You have a sheet of paper, you have names on there, you check the one you want, you put it in a box. That doesn't seem complicated, but boy, oh boy, has that been made very complicated. Here within the confines of our faith and what we believe, what we find is the addition of so many different things that have been added to it, that the simple message of the gospel, that Christ came, he lived, he died, he went back to heaven, and he did it all for our eternity, that gets lost in all the theological debates. That gets lost in all the practices and the personal interpretations and all the difficult things that keeps being added. While yet in Scripture we find the phrase, do not add to nor take away from. I've been doing this now for a long, long time. Prior to this, I've shared this openly in many of my teaching videos. I served in law enforcement. One of the direct components that I brought from that world into this world was keep it simple. Because That is how you found answers. Okay? If person A went into building B and their handprints are on the knob and their footprints are in the dust, and okay, we can start putting a story together, right? It's just not that difficult. We make things complicated sometimes. When I started in ministry, I really had no idea what I was doing. Obviously, it was clear to me that God had placed that call on my life, but it was a learning curve and a learning process. I initially began by, trying to show off what I had learned in seminary and learn from other people that I had studied and mentored under. But the Lord really continued as the years would go by to show me something different. And in the last several years, as I've gotten older, I'd like to think a little more mature, we find back to this simple principle. What does this mean? What does this mean? So I've been really, really diligent about studying that. And one morning during a reading, as I was just studying and praying, it became crystal clear. Jesus told stories. Jesus told stories. And the way that he related to people, and he met them in their condition. He spoke to them with love and concern. What we don't find in those stories is his concern over church rituals, his concerns over man-made doctrines. Nothing drives me crazier than to hear different people teaching about the doctrine of this and the doctrine of that. Well, Jesus never said any of that stuff. We've created so many different things to complicate something that is so beautifully simple. We let denominational practices and boundaries get in the way. We let all this stuff get in the way. When indeed the principles and the teachings and the life that Jesus lived and died for was focused around one thing: the souls of the lost. That's it. And that hasn't changed. The souls of the lost, those that he came to save, those that he came to give his life for. Friends, he made a personal connection. And everybody that encountered Jesus did not leave in the same way. They were lifted up. They were encouraged. Their lives were changed. They were challenged. Some were discouraged because they weren't ready to give up. Like the rich young ruler, it said he left exceedingly sorrowful because he was very wealthy and he didn't want to give any of that up. But God never told him he had to. In principle, he was saying that's become more important than even your own soul. That's become more important than those that you care about. That's a different teaching for another time. The critical nature of simple, we find it oftentimes overshadowed in the world today by, again, all these proper methods and who can speak this language and who can interpret this and who's got what degree and all the experts that we find. What we find a lot of times in that is arrogance. And that's the one thing we never find in Jesus. He was humble, in some cases meek. He wasn't braggadocious. He wasn't arrogant. He never talked down to anybody. He met people where they were. The concept of simple, it serves a lot of purpose. The average person today, and I believe this, is seeking answers. Almost everybody is seeking answers. But they're not interested in the complex. They're not interested in the difficulty. Why do I say that? Because life during the rest of the week is challenging enough. And when it comes to spiritual matters, in particular, when one comes to gather on a Sunday night or a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning, whenever their time of worship is, Saturday night, whenever they gather, why would they want to come and sit under something that's even more difficult to understand or more difficult to realize or more difficult to engage with when the rest of the whole week has been a nightmare? You need something that can be relatable. You need a message. You need a lesson. You need something that connects to the heart and assures someone there's an answer. We have enough unanswered questions in this life, friends. We have enough empty boxes in this life. We don't need to continue to add to that. And I want to close with this. We have an answer. And his name is Jesus. The simplicity of that, it brings a sense of relief. It brings a sense of comfort. And it makes those that are listening, it makes those that are receiving feel at ease. They find to be able to receive that. So how do we get there? How do we get there? By keeping it simple. Assuring that the message is accessible to everyone. They may not receive it because they don't want to, but we need to make sure that the message is accessible to all who will hear. Jesus would say many times, he who has an ear, let him hear. We find in Scripture that God desires that none should perish. How big is that word none? It kind of answers itself, doesn't it? We want to feel included. We want to feel valued. And the way that we do that is embracing the simple message of Jesus. We're going to pick back up on our next lesson on Monday, understanding relationship. How does that tie into our faith life? We're going to talk about that on Monday, and I'm going to continue to show you the beauty of simple. God bless you, friends.